Hello everybody! Even though I think that you probably have your programming environment set up properly, I want you to just really quickly listen through this slideshow because I'm going to present a bunch of background information that's generally useful to know about how Java is organized, how your computer is organized, things like this. So, and along the way, we're going to verify that your installations are correct. So, if you are a Windows user, you probably haven't done this yet, but stop the video right now and go and install Git for Windows. If you're on a Mac, don't worry about it. We're going to use Git later in the year. This is not about Git. This is about having access to the bash shell. Anyway, but more on that in a minute. Okay, so the first thing is you have to make sure that you have a 64-bit JDK 8 installed. Just because you're programming successfully doesn't necessarily mean that you're using JDK 8. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's 64-bit. But what is a JDK, and what does it mean to be 64-bit as opposed to 32-bit? And also, like, why aren't we using the most recent JDK? So to start answering those questions, let's step back for a minute. The source code that you write is a text file, and you can't execute a text file. So in order to actually make an executable program, you have to have something called a compiler that will translate your text into machine code that then a CPU can execute. Different CPUs have different languages that they natively speak, different instruction sets that they can natively execute. And so that's what a compiler does. It will translate Java into this other programming language that's built into whatever chip you happen to have inside your computer. Except what Java does is actually a little bit different than that. Java, it's a two-step process. So the slide before, this is like what would happen in the C programming language or C++. For Java, the Java compiler compiles into what's called a class file, which is Java bytecode. And bytecode is a made-up machine language for a virtual CPU, and that's called the Java virtual machine. So there's two terms that look very similar, JDK and JRE. JDK is the Java Developers Kit, and it includes the Java compiler that does that translation. The JRE is called the Java Runtime Environment, and it includes the Java Virtual Machine, which is this simulation of a computer. And the bytecode that your Java programs get compiled into get run on this virtual machine, this simulation of a CPU. So, hopefully that answers the question, what is a JDK? What's the difference between 32-bit and 64-bit software? This is something we'll speak a little bit more about in the first week, but the short answer is 30-bit, 2-bit software can only address a maximum of 64 gigabytes of memory. There's no real problem with that, practically speaking, for probably our lives. But the reason that we're using 64-bit JDK is because we're using libraries that require that we're using a 64-bit JDK. So that's why I'm going to require that you use one. The same answer applies to why are we using JDK 8. I think the most recent version is 14. The reason we're using JDK 8, again, is because during the year we're going to be using these precompiled libraries that are only compatible with that particular JDK. But it's okay because JDK 8 is a totally swell JDK, and we're not going to really use any of the features that come after that. All right, so this next section is for if you are on a PC. If you're on a Mac, we'll get to those slides in just a second. If you're on a PC, go ahead and open up your File Explorer. Go to the C drive, find the Program Files folder. That's the folder that all of your 64-bit software is by default installed into. The one right underneath, Program Files x86, is the default installation location for all your 32-bit software. So remember, we're checking to see if you have a 64-bit JDK. So go ahead and open up that Program Files folder, and then look for a folder called Java. Inside Java, you can see whether or not you have JDKs installed. This is what mine looks like, and you can see that I have two. I have JDK 1.8 and JDK 12. If you're not familiar with the word path, a path is a description of how to find a resource on your file system, so how to find a file or a folder. And it's a description of the sequence of folders that you have to visit in order to get to a particular location. So the path to this JDK would be given here. You start in the C drive, which is the name of the drive letter. Then you go into the Program Files folder. Then you go into the Java folder. PCs use backslashes, Macs use forward slashes, and Linux also uses forward slashes to describe the path. As another example of a path, this is what my C drive looks like, and you can see that I've got a Gradle folder, and inside Gradle I've got Gradle 5.4.1, and inside that is lib, and inside that is plugins. So if I wanted to describe the absolute path to plugins, it would look like this: C drive, Gradle, Gradle 5.4.1, lib, plugins, and then if there were files inside that folder, you could have the file at the end here. The reason it's important to understand about paths is you need to use them frequently when writing and reading files as you're programming. It has been my experience that unless you have used your computer a lot, you might not know where your desktop is. In fact, that might seem like a goofy question, like, where's your desktop? Like, yo, it's there on the desktop. But no, what I actually mean is your desktop is a folder that lives in your hard drive, and it's got a specific location. And now that you're in AP, you should definitely know where that is. On PCs, it's in C drive, users, and then your username, and then desktop. So if you were to save something to your desktop and you wanted to find where that file is, you should just know where your desktop folder is located. Using the built-in search for Windows is, generally speaking, not a good solution. It's not a very good search. And also, I don't know if this is true. I believe this is still true even amongst the younger generation of programmers. I think that it's shameful not to know, as a programmer, it's shameful not to know how your file system is organized. It's shameful to resort to search. Searching is what non-experts do. Knowing how your system is organized, that's what you're going to do. If you'd like to, go ahead and explore around a little bit, and please find the path to your downloads folder so that way, if you download something, you'll know where to find that. Okay, these slides were made by our TA Sriganesh, and I'm just going to read them because I don't have a Mac, and I don't really use Macs very frequently. So what he says here is, by default, the path bar that displays your path is hidden in your Finder. So you have to go to View and go down to the bottom there to Show Path Bar to enable you to see where the paths are as you're navigating around in Finder. Then, if you want to copy the path from a file, if you've found a file inside your Finder, you can click on it and then go down to the copy whatever the file name is as path name option, which you see right in the middle there. And that will copy the full path name all the way up to that file and put it in your clipboard so that way you can paste it somewhere else. The default installation location for all of your software on a Mac is in your hard drive /library, Java virtual machines, and then you should see a JDK there. So you can go ahead and look inside your actual file system to see if you have a JDK. And remember, you are looking for JDK 8. If you did that thing where you display the path, you should be able to see it at the bottom of the window there. Just like for the PC, in a Mac, you've got a users folder and then a bunch of user accounts within that folder, and then within each of those you have desktop, documents, downloads, etc. So now you also know the path to your downloads folder if you're a Mac user. In the next video, we're going to verify our JDK installation in a far more direct way by actually running the Java compiler from the command line, which is another useful thing to be able to do. So please come back for the next video.